The sharp bite of October's wind tore through Rachel Johnson's thin jacket as her raw, bleeding fingertips pressed against the chipped keys of a weathered piano someone had left outside Morrison's cafe. Every note that rose from the broken instrument came out hollow, fractured, just like her life felt in that moment. A worn cardboard sign leaned against the bench, the shaky handwriting declaring, "Music for food. Please help." A woman in a sleek coat laughed as she passed, tugging her friend's arm closer. "Would you look at this mess? Somebody should call the cops and clear her out." Rachel's stomach twisted with hunger, but she kept playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had mastered back when her world still made sense. 2 days had gone by without food, 3 nights had passed sleeping in a subway bathroom stall. The jagged edges of the piano's broken keys had reopened the cuts on her fingers, smearing little drops of blood across the yellowed ivory. Nearby, a teenager stopped with his buddy, pulling out his phone. "Yo, check this out," he called, loud enough for Rachel to hear. "Homeless chick thinks she's Mozart." They cackled, the boy filming while mugging for the camera. "Can I play for food?" he mocked in a shrill voice. "This is so cringe, dude." The laughter that followed cut through Rachel's chest like a blade. Her vision blurred, whether from tears or hunger, she wasn't sure. In her head, she heard her grandmother's steady voice. "Music is prayer, baby girl. When you play, you're talking to God." But on this cold street corner, God felt far, far away. Not long ago, Rachel had been a striking young woman, a talented African-American musician who once graced recital halls, winning applause and standing ovations. Now she looked nothing like the rising star she had been just 8 months earlier. Her natural hair, once carefully styled, was scraped into a messy bun held together with a rubber band she'd scavenged. The clothes from a shelter hung loose on her thin frame, a result of too many skipped meals. People gathered, some snapping pictures, others cracking jokes. A few tossed coins into her cup, but most treated her like a sideshow. A businessman muttered into his phone, "Security needs to move her." Bad for business. Still, Rachel kept playing, because music was all she had left. Her fingers drifted into Bach's Prelude in C major, then slipped into a smoky jazz riff her grandmother had once taught her. Even on this battered piano, even with torn fingertips and an empty stomach, the music still breathed inside her. A little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, she plays pretty." "Don't stare, honey," the woman replied, quickly pulling her away. "It's rude." "Pretty." The word lingered. When had anyone last called anything about her pretty? Though stress and hunger had hollowed her features, Rachel's deep brown eyes still held the spark that had once captivated her professors. On the rare days when she smiled, it still carried the kind of light that could fill a room. The afternoon crowd thickened as workers shuffled back from lunch. Most didn't glance her way. Those who did either sneered, whispered, or hurried by uncomfortably. "This is heartbreaking," one woman whispered. "She's talented." Her friend shrugged. "Please. Talented people don't end up on the street. She probably got into drugs." If only they knew the truth. Just 8 months ago, Rachel had been a music education major at Thornton University, studying on a full scholarship while chasing her dream of composing. She had spent long nights caring for her ailing grandmother, the woman who had raised her, and missing assignments because of it. Her hands faltered over a tricky passage, the broken key sticking. A man in a suit laughed cruelly. "Even the piano wants out." The people around him chuckled, and Rachel's cheeks flushed hot with shame. She'd once performed for hundreds of people, drawing applause. Now she couldn't play a simple piece without becoming someone's joke. Her stomach cramped, sharper this time. She hadn't eaten since digging half a sandwich out of a trash can the day before. The shelter had been full 3 nights in a row, and the streets were getting colder by the day. What would her grandmother think if she saw her now? This was the woman who had worked double shifts cleaning hospital floors to pay for piano lessons, who had believed so deeply in her granddaughter's gift. "You have a gift, baby," Grandma Johnson used to say. "Don't you ever let the world make you forget it." But the world had been merciless. After her grandmother's funeral, Rachel had uncovered the medical bills that devoured their savings. Rent went unpaid. Funeral costs drained the rest. Her scholarship disappeared after too many missed classes. Everything unraveled so quickly. The wobbly bench creaked beneath her aching back. She had been playing for nearly 4 hours, desperate to earn enough for a decent meal. But the cup held barely $3 and change. A group of college students strolled past in Thornton sweatshirts. Rachel's chest tightened. Not long ago, she had worn the same hoodie, walked with the same confidence, believed her future was safe. Now she was a warning story whispered between lectures. This is why you need a backup plan. Excuse me, miss. A shadow fell over the keys. A security guard stood there, voice firm but gentle. I need you to move along. People have complained. Rachel lifted her eyes to his. His face showed more pity than annoyance. Please, she whispered, her voice hoarse from days of silence. Just a little longer. I haven't eaten in 2 days. The guard sighed, glancing at her bloodied fingers. I'm sorry. The cafe owner says he'll call the police. There's a shelter about 6 blocks south. Dinner at 5. Rachel closed the lid slowly, her hands trembling. It's been full, she murmured. But thank you for telling me kindly. She gathered her few belongings, wondering how much longer she could keep this up. Winter was coming. Hunger and humiliation were wearing her down. From across the street, the teenager from earlier shouted again. Hey, piano girl! Play something sad? You look like you know all about that. His friends howled with laughter. Something inside her cracked. She picked up her cup of coins and walked away, leaving behind the broken piano and one of the lowest points in her life. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to survive when everything falls apart? How many of us are only one tragedy away from losing everything we worked for? 8 months earlier, things had looked entirely different for Rachel Johnson. She had woken in her small but cozy bedroom, sunlight slipping through curtains her grandmother had sewn. The walls brimmed with certificates from competitions, framed photos from recitals, and letters of acceptance to music programs. Morning, baby girl. Grandma Johnson had called from the kitchen, the smell of pancakes filling the air. Hurry up or you'll be late for Professor Williams' class. Rachel had dashed through her routine, kissed her grandmother's cheek, and rushed off to Thornton University. At 22, she was in her final year of the music education program, keeping a flawless GPA while juggling a part-time job at the campus music store. Life was demanding, but it was good. The change began quietly. Her grandmother, who had always seemed invincible despite working long hours, started feeling tired. At first, they brushed it off as age. Just slowing down, Grandma would say. I've worked since I was 14. My body's just reminding me I'm not 20 anymore. But the fatigue grew heavier. Then came the chest pains, the dizzy spells, the shortness of breath. Rachel pushed for a doctor's visit, expecting to hear about high blood pressure. Instead, the diagnosis was devastating: advanced heart disease. Decades of stress, multiple jobs, and delayed medical care had left deep scars. Surgery was necessary. Extensive treatment would follow. How much will all this cost? Her grandmother asked, her voice steady even as her eyes betrayed fear. The numbers the doctor rattled off might as well have been in another language. Even with her modest insurance, the bills would be overwhelming. But there was no choice. This was the woman who had sacrificed everything after Rachel's parents died in a car accident. So Rachel decided to take a semester off school, working longer hours and caring for her grandmother herself. She believed it would be temporary. They would push through. At first, it seemed they had. Surgery went well. Her grandmother came home. For a few weeks, things looked hopeful. But complications soon returned: infections, new procedures, endless medications that cost hundreds every month. Rachel took on a second job waitressing at a diner near the hospital. Sleep became a luxury. Professors at first were understanding, but as the months passed, her grades sank. Think about your future, Professor Martinez urged gently. Your grandmother would want you to finish your degree. I can't abandon her, Rachel had said, exhaustion heavy in her voice. She's all I've got. She gave up everything for me. The university's policies were unforgiving. Too many absences led to probation. Probation meant losing her scholarship. And from there, the spiral only quickened. Tuition was impossible without aid. Without enrollment, she lost her campus job. Meanwhile, bills kept climbing. She juggled work at the diner and evening shifts at a grocery store, but nothing came close to covering costs. Her grandmother's health declined again. More hospital stays. More bills. Doctors spoke of experimental treatments, always paired with staggering costs. One night, her grandmother called her close, her hand fragile in Rachel's. Baby girl, promise me something. Anything, Grandma. When I'm gone, you go back to school. You finish what you started. Don't let my sickness take away your dreams. Don't say that. Rachel had sobbed. You're going to get better. But her grandmother already knew. 3 weeks later, she passed peacefully in her sleep, Rachel's hand in hers. The funeral was small but heartfelt. Neighbors, church members, a few classmates, everyone spoke of a woman who had given her life for her granddaughter. Then came the flood of bills. Medical expenses. Funeral costs. The apartment that had been home for 15 years became unaffordable. Rachel begged the landlord, Mr. Peterson, for more time. He was kind but firm. Sentiment couldn't pay mortgages. She had 30 days. With no family left, no savings, and no options, she tried staying with friends. But dorms and shared apartments left no space. After weeks of couch hopping, she decided to face it on her own. The first nights in her car weren't unbearable. She parked in shopping centers, used gym showers, worked temporary jobs. But when the car broke down and the repair costs were impossible, her last safety net vanished. That's when she found the piano outside Morrison's cafe. Abandoned, broken, but playable. And for Rachel, it became a lifeline. Her only chance to earn money without an address, references, or a background check. The first time she played for tips, shame nearly swallowed her. Street performance felt like begging. It clashed with everything her grandmother taught her about dignity. But hunger erases pride. At first, people had been kinder, pausing to listen. But as the weeks wore on and her homelessness became more obvious, the kindness soured. Now she was just a spectacle. Late nights in the subway station became her normal. She would clutch her thin jacket, close her eyes, and try to hear her grandmother's voice telling her everything would be okay. But hope was fading. Still, she returned to the piano each morning. Because what else could she do? The next day, rain fell in a cold October drizzle, soaking everything. Rachel had spent the night half dozing on a subway bench until security forced her out at 3 a.m. Now, at 8, she stood before the piano. The bench was soaked, puddles pooling on the keys. She wiped them down with her sleeve. It would sound worse than usual, but she had no choice. Yesterday's $3 had bought a stale pastry and coffee. She was starving again. She set out her cardboard sign, its ink blurred from the rain, and began to play. Her stiff fingers stumbled over the first few notes. Commuters hurried by, umbrellas overhead, eyes down. An hour passed. She had earned 57 cents. The rain thickened. Rachel thought about giving up for the morning, until she heard footsteps slow behind her. Rachel didn't turn around right away. She had learned that if she made eye contact too quickly, people often grew uneasy and disappeared before she could finish a piece. So instead, she kept playing, her fingers weaving a simplified version of Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of her grandmother's favorites. The broken keys made certain passages impossible, but she shifted the melody around, adapting it to what the piano could give her. "That's beautiful," came a voice, soft but certain. Rachel's hands hovered over the keys. The voice was male, warm, touched with an accent she couldn't place. Slowly she turned. A man stood about 6 feet away, umbrella lowered to his side, raindrops clinging to his dark hair. He looked late 20s, with gentle brown eyes and an expression of genuine interest, not the pity, mockery, or casual curiosity she had grown used to. He wore well-made but simple clothes, jeans, a dark sweater, and a wool coat. "Thank you," Rachel murmured, unsure how to accept a compliment that felt sincere. "Do you know Rachmaninoff?" he asked, stepping closer. "Specifically, the second piano concerto." Rachel's brows lifted in surprise. Most passers-by asked for pop songs, or made jokes. No one had ever asked for something as intricate as Rachmaninoff. "I know parts of it," she admitted carefully, nodding toward the battered piano. "But with this, I understand its limits," the man said with a small, encouraging smile. "Play whatever you're comfortable with." Something in his tone told her he truly understood music, not as background noise, but as art. Turning back to the piano, she began the second movement. The haunting melody rose into the damp air, threading through the rain. Despite the cracked keys and warped tuning, despite the cold biting at her hands, Rachel lost herself in the music. She hadn't done that in months. Her fingers remembered, her training carried her, and for a few fleeting moments, the street corner faded away. When she finished, silence filled the air except for the steady patter of rain. "That was incredible," the man said, his voice filled with genuine awe. "You have extraordinary talent." Rachel felt warmth rise in her cheeks. "Thank you. That's kind. I'm Jackson Rodriguez," he said, extending a hand. "And I'm not just being kind. I own a recording studio about 10 blocks from here. I know talent when I hear it." She shook his hand briefly. "Rachel Johnson." "Rachel," he said gently, pausing before asking, "What brought you here, to this?" His question wasn't sharp or prying. It was asked with true concern, free of judgment. And before she could stop herself, Rachel answered honestly. "I lost my grandmother 8 months ago. Medical bills took everything. I lost my scholarship. Lost our apartment. This is all I have left." Jackson nodded, his expression steady, absorbing her words. "Before all this, I was in my senior year at Thornton University," Rachel added, her voice low. "Studying music education." Saying it hurt. Those dreams felt impossibly far away. "Would you like to get some breakfast?" Jackson asked suddenly. "There's a diner around the corner. Best pancakes in the city. My treat." Her stomach clenched at the mention of pancakes, memory tugging her back to mornings with her grandmother. But caution pressed in. She had learned to distrust sudden kindness. "Why?" she asked bluntly. Jackson didn't flinch. "Because you're gifted. You're hungry. And maybe I can help. But first, let's get you out of this rain and into somewhere warm." Every instinct told her to be careful. People didn't offer help without expecting something back. Yet Jackson's voice carried no hidden edge. And the thought of warmth and food was nearly overwhelming. "I don't want charity," Rachel said firmly. "This isn't charity," Jackson replied. "This is one musician talking to another. And maybe, if you're interested, a potential employer having breakfast with someone I'd like to learn more about." The word employer sent a flutter through her chest, though she tried to bury it. Hope was dangerous. It made every disappointment cut deeper. "What kind of work?" she asked carefully. "Let's talk about it over food," Jackson said. "No strings attached. If you're not interested, we part ways after breakfast. But right now, you look like you could use a meal, and honestly, I could use the company." Rachel glanced at the broken piano, the sagging cardboard sign, the cup holding less than $1. Then she looked at Jackson's patient, kind eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "But I'm paying for my own meal." Jackson started to protest, then stopped, seeming to understand that her dignity mattered. "Fair enough," he said. "Though I'll warn you, the pancakes are only $4, and they're worth every penny." As they walked, Rachel found herself sneaking glances at him. Jackson carried himself with an ease that spoke of confidence, but not arrogance. He held doors open naturally, matched his pace to hers, and chatted lightly about the neighborhood without pressing for details about her life. The diner was warm, filled with chatter and the clink of dishes. The hostess greeted Jackson by name, and led them to a booth by the window. "You come here often?" Rachel asked as they Saturday. "Almost every morning," Jackson admitted with a grin. "I'm useless at cooking, and Rosa makes the best coffee in town." Right on cue, a cheerful older woman approached. "Jackson, the usual?" she asked warmly. "Yes, Rosa. And whatever my friend would like." Rachel studied the menu, her eyes darting to the cheapest options. "Just pancakes and coffee." "Honey, how about some eggs? Bacon?" "You need protein," Rosa said kindly. Before Rachel could refuse, Jackson jumped in. "Rosa, add it all. Put it on my tab." Rachel frowned. "You said I'd pay for my own meal? You didn't say I couldn't buy breakfast for a potential business associate." Jackson replied smoothly, his tone gentle but firm. Rosa chuckled, patting Rachel's shoulder. "Any friend of Jackson's is a friend of mine. I'll bring you enough to last the day." Rachel sat back, overwhelmed by such simple kindness. "You really don't have to do this," she said softly. "I know I don't," Jackson answered. "I want to. And I'll tell you why." He leaned forward, his expression serious. 3 years ago, I was sleeping in my car, playing guitar on street corners just to buy gas. One night, a producer named Miguel Santos bought me dinner. Gave me work at his studio. Changed my whole life. Rachel blinked, studying him, struggling to connect the polished young man across from her with the image he painted. "Really?" "Really," Jackson nodded. "So when I hear talent like yours, especially when I can see life has beaten you down, I remember that feeling. Miguel's kindness saved me. Now maybe I can pass it forward." The sincerity in his voice stirred something inside her. She had grown so used to being dismissed, or judged, that real compassion felt almost foreign. "What kind of work are you talking about?" she asked carefully. "Let's eat first," Jackson said with a smile. "Then I'll show you the studio. But I'll tell you this much, I could use someone with your knowledge for arrangements, maybe even some session work, if you're interested." For the first time in months, Rachel felt something she'd nearly forgotten. Hope. Real, dangerous, beautiful hope. Rosa arrived with plates that filled the entire table, fluffy pancakes with butter melting down the sides, eggs as light as clouds, crisp bacon, golden hash browns. The coffee was hot and rich, warming her hands. "Rosa doesn't believe in small portions." Jackson laughed as the woman winked at them. Rachel took a bite, unable to stop a small sound of delight. Real food, hot, filling, delicious. She forced herself to eat slowly, knowing her stomach couldn't handle too much too fast. "Tell me about your studio," she asked between bites, curiosity overcoming her hesitation. Jackson's face lit up. "Rodriguez Productions started as just me, a couple pieces of gear, and a rented room. 3 years later, we're producing albums for indie artists, scoring local films, even making jingles for businesses. We've grown a lot." "That sounds amazing," Rachel said honestly. "How'd you learn the production side?" "Trial and error," he admitted with a grin. "Miguel taught me the basics. After that, I spent every free minute watching tutorials, experimenting, learning by doing. I've always loved music, but I discovered I love shaping sound too, taking raw talent and polishing it into something special." As Jackson spoke, Rachel could see it. He wasn't trying to impress her. He just loved what he did. "What would you want me to do?" she asked cautiously. "Honestly, I'm not sure yet," Jackson said. "That's why I want you to see the studio. But here's what I know, you've got incredible skill and understanding. And I think we could make something out of it. I could use help with arrangements," Jackson said thoughtfully. "Maybe some piano tracks for artists who can't afford session players. And," he paused, as though carefully choosing the next words, "I think you might have original music in you. The way you reshaped that Rachmaninoff on a broken piano, it showed creativity and intelligence that go beyond just playing what's written." Rachel felt her cheeks warm. I used to compose, she admitted quietly, before everything fell apart. I'd love to hear something of your own sometime, Jackson said. The conversation flowed easily as they finished breakfast. Jackson asked about her training, her favorite composers, the pieces that shaped her. For the first time in months, Rachel wasn't talking about music as a way to survive. She was talking about it as art, as passion. When Rosa set down the check, Jackson paid it smoothly, no show, adding a tip that made her beam. "Ready to see the studio?" he asked as they stood. Rachel nodded, though a nervous flutter mixed with her excitement. It all seemed too good to be real, and life had trained her to be cautious about anything that felt perfect. The walk took them through a neighborhood in transition. Old warehouses and brick factories were slowly being reborn as galleries, lofts, and coffee shops. Between the bright murals and boarded-up storefronts, the change was obvious. "This area's coming alive," Jackson explained. "Artists and musicians are moving in because rent's still reasonable. My studio's in an old textile mill." Rodriguez Productions was on the second floor of a converted warehouse. As they climbed the stairs, Rachel heard faint guitar riffs behind one door. "That's Studio B," Jackson said, catching her glance. "Local band working on their first record." He unlocked a door labeled Rodriguez Productions and ushered her into a modest reception area. Comfortable chairs, magazines about the industry, walls lined with framed album covers and candid shots of recording sessions. "Melanie, this is Rachel Johnson," Jackson said to the young woman at the desk. "Rachel, meet Melanie. She basically runs this place and keeps me sane." Melanie looked up from her computer with a warm smile. "Nice to meet you, Rachel. Jackson's already bragged about your piano playing." Rachel shot him a curious look. He grinned. "Called ahead while you were finishing breakfast. Wanted to be sure the main studio was open." Down a hallway lined with gold and platinum records, Jackson pointed out projects the studio had touched. Some names Rachel recognized immediately, others were new to her, but all spoke of success. Then they stepped into the main studio, and Rachel stopped short. A gleaming Steinway grand dominated the room, framed by professional recording gear, microphones, soundproofed walls, and a control booth covered in glowing dials and screens. It was like walking into a dream. "Go ahead," Jackson said softly, gesturing toward the piano. "Try it." Rachel approached reverently. The bench was perfectly set, the keys shining and smooth under her fingers. She ran a few scales and felt the difference instantly, the responsiveness, the tone. After months of pounding out melodies on a broken street piano, this was like sliding into a Ferrari after years of walking. "Play something," Jackson encouraged from the booth. She hesitated only a moment before letting her fingers drift into one of her own compositions, a piece she had written for her grandmother in her final weeks. It carried sadness, but also love, memory, and a fragile strand of hope. As she played, the weight of the last months seemed to fall away. For the first time in ages, she wasn't just surviving. She was herself again. When the last note faded, silence filled the studio. "That was original?" Jackson asked, awe in his voice. Rachel nodded, suddenly feeling exposed. "That was extraordinary," he said firmly. "The emotion, the structure, the way you resolved those lines, it's exactly the kind of brilliance I need here." Her heart pounded. What are you offering, exactly?" Jackson sat on a nearby stool, his expression steady, warm but businesslike. "A position as a studio assistant and session pianist. You'd help with arrangements, record piano tracks when needed, and pitch in on different projects. Pay starts at $15 an hour, with bonus opportunities depending on work." $15 an hour. Rachel's mind immediately began calculating rent, food, survival. "How many hours?" she asked. "Probably 20 to 30 a week to start," Jackson said. "With room to grow. And Rachel." He paused, meeting her eyes. "This isn't charity. I actually need the help. Your skills would add real value here." Rachel blinked back tears. "I'd need somewhere to live." I might be able to help, Jackson said carefully. There's a small apartment above the studio. It's not fancy, but it's got a bathroom and kitchenette. We've been using it for storage, but you could stay there until you get on your feet. Rachel froze. It sounded impossible, like someone had just laid out the answers to every problem. People didn't just do that. Not in her world. Why? She asked bluntly. What's in this for you, really? Jackson didn't dodge the question. Honestly? I get a gifted musician who can help my business. I get someone who understands music the way I do. And, he hesitated, a flicker of shyness in his expression. I get to pay forward the kindness Miguel once showed me. Helping feels right. Rachel studied his face, searching for cracks or hidden motives. All she found was sincerity. Can I see the apartment? She asked finally. Of course. The space was small but clean, one room that doubled as living and sleeping space, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a working shower. To anyone else it might have seemed modest, but to Rachel, who had been dozing on subway benches, it looked like luxury. The rent would be minimal, Jackson explained. Basically just utilities. Think of it as part of your compensation. Rachel turned toward him, her voice steady but fierce. If I say yes, you need to understand something. I'll work harder than anyone you've hired. But I won't be a charity case. This has to be a real job. Jackson nodded without hesitation. That's the only way I want it. He extended his hand. So, what do you say? Rachel took a deep breath, hearing her grandmother's voice urging her to take a chance, to believe in both herself and the kindness of others. I say yes, she whispered, reaching out her hand. When do I start? Jackson grinned. Tomorrow. 9 o'clock. That night, for the first time in 8 months, Rachel Johnson crawled into a real bed. She closed her eyes with hope in her chest and a roof over her head. Sometimes, she thought as sleep pulled her under, guardian angels show up in the most unexpected forms. The next morning she woke in the tiny studio apartment, momentarily disoriented. Then it hit her, gratitude so fierce it almost hurt. It was her first day at Rodriguez Productions. She was up by 8:30, ready a full half-hour early. After a quick shower in her own bathroom, a luxury that still felt surreal, Rachel dressed in the best clothes she owned and headed downstairs to the studio. Melanie was already behind the desk with her coffee, flashing a warm smile. Jackson's in Studio A with a morning session, she explained. He asked me to give you the grand tour and get you settled. This time, the tour went deeper than the day before. Melanie showed her the smaller Studio B, the equipment storage room, and the break room with its life-saving coffee maker. This is the most important piece of gear in the building, she said with mock seriousness, making Rachel laugh. She explained the filing system, the scheduling software, and the way the studio ran day to day. Most of our clients are great, Melanie added as they walked. Now and then you get big egos. But Jackson's good at handling personalities. He wants the studio to feel comfortable so artists can do their best work. Around 10 o'clock, Jackson appeared in the reception area with a familiar face, a singer Rachel recognized from a band currently getting radio play. Thanks for everything, Jackson, the man said warmly. Those piano arrangements really completed the track. It finally feels finished. After the client left, Jackson turned to Rachel with an apologetic look. Sorry I wasn't here when you arrived. Carlos needed some last-minute changes for a single that's dropping next week. Melanie's been filling me in, Rachel assured him. This place is amazing. Good, Jackson said with a smile. Because I've got a project where your input could make a real difference. He led her to Studio A. Sheet music covered the piano, guitars lined the walls. Local folk duo called River and Stone, he explained. Great harmonies, strong songs, but their instrumental arrangements need work. They want piano in most tracks, but neither of them can play well enough to pull it off. Rachel sat at the Steinway, looking over the pages. The songs were good, emotion in the chords, sincerity in the melodies, but the piano parts were bare bones. "These could be a lot stronger," she said, studying the notation. "Exactly what I thought," Jackson agreed. "Would you take a look at their lead single? See if you can rework the part without changing their overall vision?" Rachel nodded. She played through the arrangement as written. It was fine, but nothing memorable. "Can I try some variations?" she asked. "Please do." And then it happened. Rachel began layering subtleties into the chords, weaving in unexpected textures that deepened the song's mood without stepping on the vocals. She added a short bridge that wasn't there before, a piano interlude that lifted the emotion and resolved beautifully. Jackson watched from the control booth, adjusting levels as she worked. By the time she finished, the once simple folk tune had become something haunting and radio-ready. "Play that last version again," Jackson called through the intercom. She did, and he recorded it. When she stopped, he came back into the room, eyes shining. "Rachel, that wasn't just an arrangement. You completely reimagined the song. It's 3 times stronger now, and you didn't lose any of what made it theirs. Is that okay?" she asked, suddenly worried she'd gone too far. "It's better than okay. This is exactly what the studio needs." He sat beside her on the bench. "River and Stone are coming tomorrow to record vocals. Would you play piano for their session?" "You mean professional recording?" Rachel's voice trembled with both excitement and nerves. "Professional recording, professional pay, and professional credit," Jackson confirmed. "This is their debut single, and your arrangement will be part of it." The rest of the morning was spent going through the studio's recording procedures and rehearsing the tracks. Jackson proved an excellent teacher, explaining not just how to do things, but why they mattered in making music sound polished. During lunch, Melanie joined them in the break room with sandwiches from a deli down the street. She looked at Rachel with her trademark directness. "So, what's your story? Jackson says you're insanely talented, but he left out the details." Rachel gave a shortened version, focusing on her education and musical background, not the darker parts of her recent life. "Thornton University, huh?" Melanie mused. "I almost went there for audio engineering. What made you pick education over performance?" "I wanted to teach," Rachel said simply. "My grandmother always told me that sharing your gift is the best way to honor it." "That's beautiful," Jackson said softly. "And you still could, finish your degree. This doesn't have to be permanent if you don't want it to be." The thought felt both distant and dangerous. Rachel had buried the idea of school, convinced it was gone forever. Yet hearing Jackson speak of it like it was still possible stirred something she hadn't dared touch. That afternoon brought a different kind of project. A local business wanted a radio jingle. The demo was flat, forgettable. "Think you can make this more interesting?" Jackson asked. Working side by side, they transformed it. Rachel built a lively piano bass that was simple enough to stick in people's heads but smart enough to sound professional. Jackson layered in guitar and drums. Together, they turned a dull tune into something catchy. "I've got an idea," Rachel said as they played it back. "What if we create variations for morning, afternoon, and evening, same melody, but different moods?" Jackson's face lit up. "That's brilliant. Clients love options. Shows we're thinking bigger." Within an hour, they had 3 versions ready, each with its own flavor, all tied together. "Do you realize what you just did?" Jackson asked, looking at her almost in awe. "You took a throwaway project and turned it into something that's going to blow the client away. And they'll tell others. This will bring in more business." "You had the vision," Rachel protested. "I just handled the technical side." Jackson shook his head. "No. This was collaboration. And it was your spark that made it work." As evening settled in, Jackson showed her how to close the studio, shut down the systems, and lock up. "How did today feel?" he asked as they stood by the door. "Like coming back to life," Rachel admitted. "I'd forgotten what it feels like to create music, not just play it." "Tomorrow will be even better," Jackson promised. "River and Stone will be thrilled with what you've done." Climbing the stairs to her apartment, Rachel thought about how wildly life had turned in just 24 hours. Yesterday, she was cold and hungry on the street, pounding out tunes on a ruined piano. Tonight, she was a studio musician with her own place and meaningful work waiting for her in the morning. But it wasn't just the stability. For the first time since her grandmother's passing, she felt like herself again. Not a ghost of who she had been, but Rachel Johnson, the composer, the musician, the dreamer. In her little kitchen, she hummed through the melodies they had built together that day. The music was back in her veins. And maybe, just maybe, Jackson was right, she could finish her degree one day. She could teach. She could dream again. For now, though, it was enough to have work she loved, a safe place to rest, and the promise of new music tomorrow. What would you do if someone handed you the chance to rebuild your life? Would you be brave enough to take it? 3 weeks later, Rachel had found her rhythm at Rodriguez Productions. Her days were full and challenging, recording piano tracks, helping arrange film scores, supporting other artists. River and Stone's single had been a hit, getting radio play and drawing attention to the studio. Word spread quickly, and new clients started asking specifically for Rachel by name. "You're building quite a reputation," Melanie told her one morning, tapping at the booking calendar. 3 clients this week requested that piano player Jackson discovered. Rachel blushed with pride. After months of being invisible, overlooked, or ridiculed, being sought out for her talent felt unreal. Just then, Jackson walked in with his coffee and a pile of mail. He handed her an envelope. "Speaking of reputations, this came for you yesterday." Rachel's heart skipped at the return address, Thornton University Office of Financial Aid. Her hands shook as she tore it open. "What is it?" Jackson asked gently. "They're inviting me to reapply for aid this spring," Rachel whispered. "Some new policy for medical hardship cases." Jackson's face broke into a smile. "Rachel, that's incredible." "I don't know," she said, setting the letter aside. "It's been almost a year. I'd be so behind. And if I slip on grades, I'd lose it all again." "But it's possible," Jackson said firmly. "You could finish your degree." The possibility tugged at her, terrifying and tempting all at once. She had carved a new life here at the studio. To throw herself back into school felt risky. And there was another truth she hadn't spoken aloud. Over the past 3 weeks, her feelings toward Jackson had shifted. He was kind, talented, and treated her like an equal partner in their work. She caught herself looking forward to their long talks about music, the spark in his eyes when they landed on a beautiful chord progression together. Sometimes she swore she saw something similar in his gaze. But he was her boss. Her rescuer. The man who had pulled her out of the rain and given her a second chance. To let those feelings grow felt wrong, no matter how real they were. Rachel folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. "Let's focus on today," she said firmly. "What's on the schedule?" "Actually," Jackson said, sounding almost nervous, "today's a little different." A friend of Jackson's ran a small music venue downtown, and that morning he asked Rachel if she'd like to go. "An open mic night?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Jackson said, suddenly looking a little unsure of himself. "Call it research. Local talent, different styles. I thought you might enjoy it." The way he said it, with that slight hesitation, felt more like an invitation than just work. Rachel smiled faintly. "I'd like that. What kind of place is it?" "Small. Cozy. Maybe 50 seats. They get a mix, singer-songwriters, poets, jazz folks. It's not about perfection, it's about support." Rachel carried the thought with her all day as they worked through sessions. She hadn't sat in a music audience since before her grandmother got sick. The idea of hearing music as a listener, not a performer, stirred both excitement and a nervous ache of longing. At 6, they locked up the studio. Jackson drove them downtown in his well-kept Honda Civic. The car was neat, though clearly lived in, CDs in the console, sheet music sliding around in the back seat. "You ever perform your own songs?" Rachel asked as they eased into traffic. Sometimes, Jackson admitted. I write, but I'm more at home producing. Helping others sound their best. What about you? Do you share your originals? I used to, Rachel said softly. In college recitals, sometimes. I miss it, playing something that came from me, not just from a page. Maybe tonight will spark that again, Jackson said. The venue, a spot called the Blue Note, was just as Jackson described, mismatched chairs clustered around tiny tables, a stage close enough to touch, and a crowd full of energy and warmth. Miguel Santos, the same Miguel who had once given Jackson his big break, was hosting. So this is the piano genius I've been hearing about, Miguel said with a wide grin as he shook Rachel's hand. Jackson says you're transforming his studio. Jackson's being generous, Rachel replied, though the compliment warmed her. Generous? Miguel laughed. If he says you're brilliant, I believe him. They settled into a table, ordered drinks, and watched the first acts. Some were shaky, others polished, but every single one got applause and encouragement. This is wonderful, Rachel whispered during a pause. That's the spirit of this place, Jackson said. It's about community, not perfection. She felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. Surrounded by music lovers, reminded of why she had chosen this life, Rachel felt her heart stir. Then Miguel stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a special guest tonight. Someone making waves in our scene, Jackson Rodriguez. Come on up. Jackson blinked, half surprised, but already rising. You planned this? Rachel teased. Maybe a little, he admitted, grabbing his guitar. Come with me? I could use a piano player. Rachel froze. I don't know the song. It's simple. Key of G. I'll nod when the changes come. Before she could talk herself out of it, she followed him up. The upright piano on stage was old, worn, but tuned. Jackson settled with his guitar and turned to the crowd. This is a song I wrote recently, he explained. It's about second chances, and the people who help us find our way back. He began to pick a gentle melody. Rachel's hands found chords that wrapped around his guitar line, instinctive and natural. His voice carried lyrics about broken dreams, unexpected kindness, and hope returning when you least expect it. When he reached the chorus, singing of guardian angels in ordinary clothes, he looked straight at Rachel. Her breath caught. The two of them locked in, their music weaving together as if it had always been meant to. The audience sat utterly still, hanging on every note. When the song ended, the applause came warm and long, filling the little room with appreciation. Back at their table, Miguel clapped them both on the shoulders. That was beautiful. The chemistry between you two, it's real. That word, chemistry, stayed with Rachel as Jackson drove her home. Thank you for tonight, she told him as he walked her to the stairs. I'd forgotten how much I loved just listening to music. Being in a community like that. Thank you for playing with me, Jackson replied. His voice softened. That was special. They lingered in the hallway, not quite ready to part. Something between them had shifted, no longer just boss and employee, but something deeper, more complicated. Jackson, Rachel began, then faltered. I know, he said quietly. I feel it too. But I don't want you to ever think your job depends on anything except your talent. That's all that matters here. What if that's not what I'm worried about? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped a little closer. Then what are you worried about? I'm worried I'm misreading this. That I'm so unused to kindness, I'm mistaking it for something else. You're not wrong, Jackson said softly. But you're right, it's complicated. Your life's been changing so fast. I don't want to add pressure. Rachel's heart steadied. Playing with you tonight felt right. Like this is what I'm meant to be doing, and who I'm meant to be doing it with. Jackson's smile was tender. I felt that too. So maybe we don't figure it all out tonight. Maybe we just take it step by step. Step by step, Rachel agreed. Starting with breakfast tomorrow. As friends and partners in music. As friends and partners. Jackson echoed. Rachel climbed the stairs feeling lighter than she had in a year. The Thornton letter still sat in her pocket, but it no longer felt like her only hope. She had choices again. She had a future that could hold music, love, and possibilities she thought she'd lost forever. 2 months passed, and life at Rodriguez Productions grew busier and brighter. Rachel and Jackson had settled into a rhythm of seamless teamwork by day and music-filled nights exploring the city together. Their relationship had no official label, but the undercurrent was undeniable: small touches, lingering looks, conversations that ran long after midnight. Rachel chose to defer her return to Thornton for now. The studio was thriving, and she was learning more in a few months than she could in years of classes. It felt right to stay. One morning, Jackson looked over the crowded booking calendar and said, "We need to talk expansion. 3 months ago, we had maybe 15 hours a week. Now? 40 minimum. We're turning clients away." "What kind of expansion?" Rachel asked, though she could guess. "More equipment. Maybe another recording space. And definitely another full-time employee." He glanced at her with intent. "Someone with arrangement skills and client management. Someone like you?" Rachel blinked. "Are you offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering you a partnership," Jackson said seriously. "Not ownership, yet. But real say in decisions. And pay that reflects your value." Before she could respond, Melanie's voice buzzed through the intercom. "Jackson, line 2. A Sarah Chin from Atlantic Records." Jackson and Rachel exchanged stunned looks. An A&R rep from Atlantic was calling them. "Take it with me," Jackson said. "I've got a feeling this involves you." The call was indeed about Rachel's work. Sarah had heard River and Stone's single on a Spotify playlist. "The arrangement is outstanding," she said. "Exactly the sophistication we want for crossover artists. We'd like Rachel Johnson to work with Zoe Williams, a debut artist of ours. Would she be willing to come to Los Angeles for a 2-week residency?" Rachel's pulse raced. Atlantic Records. Los Angeles. This was the kind of opportunity she'd once dreamed of. After the call, she sat in stunned silence. "Rachel," Jackson said finally, "this could change everything. You have to do it. But what about the studio? Our projects? They'll wait," he said firmly. "Opportunities like this don't." That night over dinner at Rose's Diner, Rachel noticed something behind Jackson's encouragement. He was proud, but also worried. "What aren't you saying?" she asked. "I'm happy for you," he admitted slowly. "But I'm scared too. Scared you'll go to LA and realize how much bigger the world is. That you'll move on from us, from me." His honesty cut straight through her. She reached across the table. "Everything good in my life right now started with you believing in me. Don't you think I know that?" He nodded, though his eyes were clouded. "Even so, I want you to chase this. Even if it means leaving me behind." As they walked back to the studio, they agreed she'd accept the offer, while making sure there was room for her to return. And then, standing in the hallway outside her apartment, Jackson hesitated. "There's something else," he said quietly. "We need to talk about us. About whatever this is between us." Rachel's breath caught. She had been thinking the same thing. Their slow-blooming bond was undeniable, and now, Atlantic Records was about to test it. The opportunity in Los Angeles had stirred up uncertainty, but Rachel knew she couldn't just bury what was growing between her and Jackson. "I don't want to assume anything," she said carefully, "but I also don't want to act like there's nothing here." "There's definitely something," Jackson agreed. "The question is whether it's strong enough to handle distance, and the unknown. Only one way to find out." Rachel stepped closer. "Jackson, I care about you as more than a friend, more than just a business partner. This doesn't change that." "I care about you too," he admitted softly. "Maybe more than I should, given the circumstances. The dim hallway held them in that fragile pause where words meant everything. Finally, Jackson brushed his hand gently against her cheek. "Can I kiss you?" he whispered. "I was hoping you would," Rachel breathed. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened naturally, as though they'd both been waiting for it longer than they realized. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Worth the wait," Jackson said with quiet conviction. "Definitely," Rachel agreed. "And whatever happens in L.A., this is real. We're real. Promise me something," Jackson said, his voice steady. "Promise me you'll take every opportunity that comes your way, even if it means change for us. You deserve it." "I promise," Rachel said. "If you promise me something too." "What's that?" "Promise you'll still be here when I come back. Not just the studio, you." "I promise," Jackson said, sealing it with another kiss. 3 days later, Rachel was on a plane to Los Angeles with a small suitcase and a heart full of nervous excitement. Everything in her life had shifted in just a few months, but somehow she knew the real adventure was only beginning. As the plane lifted, she thought of Jackson's words about guardian angels and ordinary clothes. She'd found hers, and now it was time to see what she could build with the second chance he had given her. For the first time in over a year, uncertainty felt like possibility instead of fear. Los Angeles was dazzling, intimidating, and alive. The Atlantic Records building in Hollywood looked like something out of her dreams, glass and steel, buzzing with creativity. Gold and platinum plaques lined the walls, each one a reminder of the legends who'd launched their careers here. Sarah Chin greeted her in the lobby, every bit the polished, fast-moving executive. "We're thrilled to have you," Sarah said warmly. "Zoe's been struggling with arrangements for months. You may be the fresh perspective she needs." Rachel followed her through a studio that made even Jackson's setup back home seem small. At its center gleamed a concert grand piano that cost more than most houses. "Zoe should be here in an hour," Sarah said. "In the meantime, let me play you some of her demos." The speakers filled the room with Zoe Williams's voice, strong yet vulnerable, melodies full of raw emotion. Rachel was impressed instantly. The songs were good, but Sarah was right. The arrangements felt flat, unfinished. "She writes on guitar," Sarah explained. "Simple strumming, basic progressions. Every attempt at layering instruments has either drowned her out or felt generic." Rachel was already sketching ideas in her head, piano lines that would cradle Zoe's voice, strings to lift her emotion higher, rhythms that could carry the songs forward without crowding them. When Zoe arrived, she wasn't the glossy pop star Rachel expected. She was a girl about Rachel's age, blonde hair tied in a ponytail, jeans and a vintage band tee. Her smile was genuine, though guarded. "So you're the arrangement genius Sarah keeps hyping?" Zoe said as they shook hands. "I heard that River and Stone track. Beautiful stuff." "Thank you," Rachel replied. "I've been listening to your demos. Your songwriting is incredible. These songs just need the right support." The first day was spent simply talking, Zoe on her acoustic guitar, Rachel scribbling notes. "My biggest fear," Zoe confessed as they worked through Midnight Drive, "is overproduction. These songs came from real life. I don't want them polished until they don't feel like mine anymore." "You're right," Rachel agreed. "The best arrangements don't draw attention to themselves. They let the song become more of itself." By day 2, they had fallen into rhythm, Zoe playing, Rachel experimenting with piano, sometimes suggesting subtle chord shifts. When Rachel tried out a delicate piano line under broken windows, Zoe stopped mid-verse. "That's it," she said, her voice cracking with relief. "That's exactly what I couldn't figure out how to play. It's what I was hearing in my head." The work stretched Rachel's abilities, demanding every ounce of her training and intuition. But it was exhilarating. Each evening, she called Jackson, telling him about the sessions while hearing updates about the studio back home. "It's incredible here," Rachel admitted one night. "But intimidating, too. Everything moves so fast. Everyone expects perfection." "You are perfect," at least musically. Jackson teased, making her laugh. Then, softer. I miss you. I miss you too, she whispered. By the end of the first week, they had 6 songs arranged. Sarah was thrilled. Over lunch one afternoon, she leaned in with a new offer. Have you considered relocating? She asked. Atlantic could use you as a staff arranger. Steady salary, high-profile artists, Los Angeles as your base. Rachel's heart pounded. The offer was beyond tempting, but it also meant leaving behind Rodriguez Productions. Leaving Jackson. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Sarah said, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this move fast. That night, Rachel walked Santa Monica Beach, watching the Pacific swallow the sunset in gold. Jackson's call came just as the last light dipped. Hey! His voice carried warmth even across the miles. Today was complicated, Rachel admitted, and told him about the job offer. Jackson was quiet, then finally said, That's the kind of break most musicians dream of. You have to consider it. But it would mean staying here. Leaving you? Leaving us. Rachel, we can figure it out, Jackson said. Long distance isn't easy, but if anyone can do it, we can. And maybe Rodriguez Productions could stretch west. I don't know what it would look like, but I'd try. For us. Her chest tightened at the sound of his faith. That was exactly why she loved him, because instead of holding her back, he dreamed alongside her. I love you. She blurted out before she could stop herself. I love you too. Jackson replied immediately. Which is why I'll always want you to take the opportunities you deserve, even if they make things harder for us. The second week flew by. The final tracks were finished, sophisticated but still true to Zoe's raw emotion. The album was ready, and Zoe hugged Rachel tightly. This is the best collaboration of my career, Zoe said. I hope we get to do this again. On her last night, Sarah invited Rachel to dinner in Beverly Hills to revisit the staff position. I have to be honest, Rachel said, setting down her fork. I'm not ready to relocate. But I would love project-based work, come out here for collaborations then return home. Sarah considered, then nodded. That could work. Priority artists only. Higher pay per project. Flexible for you. Relief washed through Rachel. It was the perfect balance. Flying back the next day, she felt like she was carrying the best of both worlds. When she saw Jackson waiting at the airport, every doubt about her decision vanished. This, him, their studio, their life, was home. How does it feel to be a rising star? Jackson asked on the drive back. Rachel laughed. It feels good. But not as good as coming home to you. 6 months later, Rachel's life hummed with a steady rhythm she never thought possible. She split her time, 3 weeks at Rodriguez Productions, 1 week in L.A., and both sides thrived. Atlantic kept calling her back, and the studio had grown to include a small West Coast branch. But the best part wasn't the work, it was waking up beside Jackson, building a life together that mixed love and music seamlessly. One morning, Jackson handed her an envelope with elegant script. Inside was an invitation that made her breath catch. The Morrison Center for the Arts Gala, featuring Rachel Johnson as pianist. Jackson, she whispered, this is one of the most prestigious venues in the country. And they asked for you by name, Jackson said, beaming. The gala required 1 classical piece and 1 original. Rachel chose Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the same piece Jackson had first asked her to play on that broken piano months ago, and a reworked orchestral version of the piece she had written for her grandmother. Rehearsals consumed her days, and Jackson stood steady as her anchor. You'll be incredible, he told her every night when doubts crept in. 2 weeks before the concert, she got an unexpected call. Rachel, it's Professor Martinez, came the warm voice of her old Thornton mentor. We've been following your career. The university would like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your degree, with a graduate assistantship to teach while you study. The offer stunned her. Months ago, she would have cried with relief. Now, with her career soaring and her life with Jackson steady, the decision didn't feel as simple. That's an incredibly generous offer, Rachel said softly. Can I have some time to think about it? Rachel asked Professor Martinez. Of course, he replied warmly. Though I should mention several of our faculty are planning to attend your Morrison Center performance. We're all very proud of what you've accomplished. That night, Rachel and Jackson sat in their usual booth at Rose's Diner, the place that had become their spot for big decisions. Over coffee and pie, she laid out the offer. What do you think? She asked. I think you should do whatever feels right for your long-term goals, Jackson said carefully. But I'll say this, some of the most successful people in music never finish degrees. Your experience now is worth more than any classroom could teach. Part of me still wants to teach, Rachel admitted. My grandmother believed in sharing knowledge. Sometimes I feel like I should finish what I started. You are teaching, Jackson reminded her. Every time you guide a young artist in the studio, every time you help someone discover their voice, you're teaching. Just not in a lecture hall. Rosa appeared topping off their mugs. Serious faces again? Another life decision? Rachel's considering going back to finish her degree. Jackson explained. Mija, Rosa said, sitting down beside them without asking, something she'd earned the right to do. I never finished high school, but I raised 3 kids into good adults. I taught dozens of young people how to work hard and treat customers right. School is one way, not the only way. But I made a promise, Rachel said softly. To my grandmother. To myself. Your promise, Rosa countered gently, was to use your gift to make the world better. And from where I'm sitting, you're doing just that. Rachel decided to wait until after the Morrison Center performance. That night would show her where her heart truly wanted to go. The week before the concert was intense. Rachel rehearsed with the Morrison Center Orchestra, her original composition swelling to life under the baton of conductor Maria Santos. Your work tells a complete emotional story in 12 minutes, Maria said after rehearsal. That's the mark of a true composer. The night before the performance, Jackson cooked her favorite pasta by candlelight. How do you feel? He asked. Nervous, Rachel admitted. But excited, too. Like everything I've been working toward leads here. Tomorrow, Jackson said, taking her hand, you'll remind the world why music matters. You'll tell your grandmother's story, and your own, without saying a word. The Morrison Center was sold out, nearly 2,000 people, including critics, industry leaders, and professors from Thornton University. Backstage, Rachel paced in her elegant black dress, heart racing. A stagehand called. 5 minutes, Miss Johnson. She checked her phone, texts waiting. From Jackson, break a leg, beautiful. I love you. I'm so proud. From Melanie, the whole studio is here cheering you on. From Sarah Chin in L.A., you're going to be amazing. Rachel smiled, steadied herself, and walked on stage. The grand piano shimmered under warm spotlights. As the audience applauded, she found Jackson's face in the front row, his pride glowing like a beacon. Good evening, she said clearly. Tonight I'll perform 2 works. First, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. And then, an original composition I wrote for my grandmother, the woman who taught me that music is the language of the heart. The Rachmaninoff was flawless. Precision, emotion, strength, everything she had trained for came alive. The orchestra followed her lead seamlessly, and the audience hung on every note. But it was her original piece that truly captured them. It began with a fragile melody, love, loss, resilience, then grew into something triumphant, as if every hardship had been transformed into hope. Jackson wiped away tears. This was the woman he loved, not just a pianist, but a survivor who turned pain into beauty. When the last note faded, the hall erupted in a standing ovation. Rachel rose from the bench, overwhelmed, and caught Jackson's eyes. He mouthed, I love you. Thank you, she told the audience when the applause quieted. Music saved my life. Tonight you reminded me why I'll never stop believing in its power to heal and transform. Backstage, she was swept into congratulations. Professor Martinez embraced her. Critics praised her composition. David Kim, a leading classical reviewer, told her, "This deserves to be recorded immediately." On a video call, Sarah Chin beamed. "3 major film composers want to work with you after hearing that performance. We need to talk." But the embrace that mattered most was Jackson's. "You were extraordinary," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "We did it," Rachel whispered back. "We really did." 1 week later, Rachel and Jackson stood outside Morrison's cafe, where a broken piano had once Saturday. "Hard to believe it started here," Rachel said. "Not started," Jackson corrected. "Your gift, your strength, they were always there. This was just where our stories crossed. They weren't there for nostalgia. They were there for an announcement." The Morrison performance had led to recording contracts and film scoring offers, but Rachel's heart pushed her in another direction too. That afternoon, she launched the Johnson Foundation for Music Education, a nonprofit giving free instruments and lessons to kids from low-income families. Funded by her royalties, Jackson's studio, and industry supporters, it was her way of paying kindness forward. "Music shouldn't be a luxury," Rachel told the local news crew. "Every child deserves the chance to discover their gift. I know what it's like to lose everything, and how powerful it is when someone believes in you. This is my way of passing that on." After the cameras left, Jackson led her to their favorite bench in the park. He pulled out a small velvet box. Rachel froze, her heart pounding. "Rachel Johnson," Jackson said, dropping to one knee. "You are the strongest, most talented, most beautiful person I know. You've taught me what it means to be true partners, in love, in life, in music. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, elegant but understated, just like them. "Yes," Rachel said through tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Jackson slipped it onto her finger, she thought about the journey, from hunger and broken keys to this moment of love, stability, and possibility. "My guardian angel in ordinary clothes," Jackson murmured as he kissed her. 6 months later, Rachel stood on the same street outside Morrison's cafe, only now on a stage for the Foundation's first annual street music festival. She wore her engagement ring, introduced young performers, and beamed as a little girl, about the age Rachel had been when she first touched piano keys, played her heart out on a keyboard provided by the Foundation. "She reminds me of someone I know," Jackson whispered, stepping beside her. "She reminds me of someone I used to be," Rachel said with a smile. The circle was complete. From being given help to giving it. From survival to service. From lost dreams to dreams reborn. As the music filled the air, Rachel knew her grandmother would be proud. The future stretched out bright and limitless, built on love, resilience, and the truths she had lived. Sometimes guardian angels do appear, disguised as ordinary people, ready to remind you that no dream is ever truly lost, only waiting to be reborn.